Today we are reviewing comparative analysis of diametric nutritional paradigms. Gary Null's plant-based detoxification versus Joachim Barthol's evolutionary ketogenesis, alongside Beyond the Fiber Lie, Exposing the Dangers of Plant-Based Diets and Embracing Evolutionary Living by Joachim Barthol, and The Complete Guide to Health and Nutrition and the Healing Foods Cookbook by Gary Null.
Right. And it's quite a lineup we have.
Yeah, it really is, because we are basically looking at two experts who analyze the exact same epidemic of modern chronic disease. They look at the exact same human digestive tract, and they arrive at completely opposite, radically extreme solutions.
It is the ultimate biological whiplash.
Oh, absolutely. Like, one wants you to drink raw amaranth and just, flush your system out like a clogged pipe.
Yeah.
And the other wants you to eat 80% animal fat and basically claims that eating a salad is like swallowing sandpaper.
Yeah, the modern dietary landscape is just incredibly polarized right now. But these two paradigms, they represent the absolute furthest endpoints of that spectrum.
Which is exactly why we're going to impartially unpack all the core biochemical arguments of both extremes today. You listening right now, you are probably so overwhelmed by contradictory diet advice.
Oh, who isn't, right?
Right. So on one side, we have Gary Null's strict raw vegan detoxification model. And on the other, Joachim Barthol's evolutionary carnivore protocol. And just to be clear, we aren't here to pick a winner today.
No, not at all. We are just going to dig into the actual mechanisms, the underlying biology driving these contrasting philosophies.
Exactly. So you can understand what is actually happening at a cellular level when someone adopts one of these extreme lifestyles. So let's start with the first one.
Yeah, let's look at Null's plant-based model. To really grasp it, we have to understand his foundational premise.
Okay, well, lay it on me.
Well, Null basically views the human body as this miraculous self-healing machine. But there's one massive caveat.
Which is?
That innate healing only activates when the body is totally freed from toxic accumulation and absolutely flooded with highly bioavailable plant-derived micronutrients.
So he's looking at things like, cardiovascular disease or cognitive decline.
Right, and he's viewing them fundamentally as diseases of inflammation, environmental pollution and cellular oxidation.
Okay, so the overarching goal of his protocol is what the sources actually call exogenous antioxidant saturation.
Exactly. Exogenous meaning from the outside.
Right, so we are bringing in massive amounts of antioxidants from outside the body to fight off this cellular rust. And to achieve this, Null advocates for a very specific diet matrix.
Yeah, he wants 75% raw and 25% lightly cooked plant foods.
And that's a lot of raw food. Why so much? What is the actual biological danger of, cooking a vegetable?
Well, it comes down to molecular structure. When you apply heat to food, particularly really high heat, you fundamentally alter its chemistry.
Okay.
Null points specifically to the creation of advanced glycation end products. Or AGs, for short.
AGs. Let's break that down for a second. What are AGs actually doing inside the body?
So think of AGEs like a sticky caramelized syrup.
Ooh.
Yeah, right. When proteins or fats combine with sugar in your bloodstream, which is often accelerated by heat, they form these sticky compounds.
And then what happens?
Once they're inside your system, they essentially gum up your cellular machinery. They stiffen blood vessels, they age the skin, and they trigger massive immune responses.
Because the body recognizes them as damage, right?
Exactly. So Null argues that by keeping 75% of your diet raw and only lightly cooking the rest at low temperatures, you preserve the natural enzymes of the plant.
And you avoid feeding your body those sticky inflammatory mutagens. That makes sense.
Right, and that explains the inputs. Heavy reliance on legumes, nuts, seeds, and ancient grains.
Like amaranth, quinoa, millet, buckwheat, all that good stuff. But what is equally fascinating to me is his list of strict eliminations.
Oh, yeah. It's extensive.
Right. He removes meat, poultry, shellfish, dairy, gluten, refined carbs, sugar, alcohol, caffeine.
Which, to be fair, most people would expect those on a detox.
Sure. But he also strictly eliminates nightshade vegetables. No tomatoes, no eggplants, no bell peppers. Why take out vegetables on a plant-based detox?
It really highlights how targeted his approach to inflammation is. Nightshades contain these specific chemical compounds called alkaloids. Selenine is a really common one.
Okay. And are those bad for everyone?
Well, no, for a healthy person, they might not be an issue at all. But Null argues that for a body already burdened by chronic illness or autoimmune issues, these alkaloids act as direct pro-inflammatory triggers.
Oh, wow. So they can cause the exact kind of joint pain and systemic inflammation that people are adopting this diet to cure in the first place.
Precisely.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You don't want to throw gasoline on a fire you're actively trying to put out.
Right, exactly.
But let's pivot and look at the gut mechanism here, because fiber is it's the cornerstone of Null's entire digestive philosophy, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. He argues high plant fiber is absolutely essential.
See, I've always heard fiber is good for digestion, but what is it actually doing down there? Is it just acting like a broom, pushing waste out?
That is the common myth, yeah. But the reality is actually much more biochemical. In Null's paradigm, fiber isn't just a physical broom. It's a prebiotic.
Meaning it's food.
Yes, food for your gut bugs. The human body actually cannot digest fiber itself, but the trillions of beneficial microbes living in your gastrointestinal tract, they
Oh,
can.
okay, so they eat it.
Right. When those microbes feast on that plant fiber, they ferment it. And as a byproduct of that fermentation, they excrete these things called short-chain fatty acids.
And the most critical one is called butyrate, right?
Yes, butyrate, that's the star of the show.
And why is butyrate the ultimate goal here?
Because butyrate provides the primary energy source for the cells that line your colon. It is quite literally what keeps those cells healthy and tightly packed together.
Okay, so it maintains the gut barrier.
Exactly. It maintains the integrity of the gut barrier, which prevents what we call leaky gut.
Right, leaky gut, which is where undigested food particles and toxins basically slip through the intestinal wall and get straight into the bloodstream.
Yeah, and that triggers massive systemic inflammation. So without fiber to feed the microbes, you get no butyrate. The barrier degrades, and the whole system fails.
Listening to all this emphasis on flushing the system and supplementing, it sounds to me like Null is treating the body like a highly sensitive, high-end water filtration system.
That's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, like you have to constantly run pristine, antioxidant-rich water through it, which in this case would be his recommended plant juices and supplements,
Right.
while obsessively keeping any hard water out. The hard water being the meats, the dairy, the nightshades. Because if you let the hard water in, the delicate filter calcifies and clogs up.
That is an excellent analogy, and he takes that flushing process very, very seriously.
Doesn't he have a specific morning routine for it?
Yeah, the daily protocol involves this morning tonic of lemon juice, apple cider vinegar, and manuka honey, and that's followed by 2 12-ounce glasses of potassium-rich coconut water.
Wow, that's a lot of liquid right away.
It is, but the really crucial part of this filtration analogy is what is happening in the liver.
Okay, let's talk about the liver.
So Null prescribes massive exogenous antioxidant supplementation. We're talking calcium and magnesium citrates, methylated B12, CoQ10, quercetin, zinc.
Just a huge stack.
Yeah. And the goal is to aggressively support phase I and phase II liver detoxification pathways.
I want to pause on that for a second because liver detox is a huge buzzword. It gets thrown around a lot. How do phase I and phase II actually work?
Okay, so think of the liver as a 2-step waste management facility. Phase I is basically the wrecking ball.
The wrecking ball, okay.
Yeah. It takes a fat-soluble toxin, say a pesticide or a heavy metal, and it uses enzymes to smash it into a smaller, more water-soluble piece.
So it can be flushed out easier.
Right. But the problem is that smashed piece is often a highly reactive free radical.
Wait, so it's actually more dangerous temporarily?
Exactly. It's more dangerous than the original toxin for a brief window.
Yeah.
Phase I essentially creates a bunch of dangerous debris.
Yikes. So then what happens?
That is where phase II comes in. Phase II is the packaging department. It takes that dangerous debris, binds it to another molecule, usually using sulfur or amino acids from your diet, and neutralizes it.
So then it can be safely excreted in urine or bile.
Precisely. So Null's protocol uses that heavy antioxidant payload to neutralize the free radicals generated in phase I.
Ah, I see. So it ensures the liver doesn't damage itself while trying to clean house.
Exactly. He uses the plant glucose for clean cellular fuel, and the antioxidants act as a protective shield.
Okay, so we have a very clear picture of Null's universe now. Plants are medicine, fiber is the ultimate gut healer, and antioxidants are the biochemical shield. So here is my question. If Null looks at the body and believes plants are the ultimate medicine, how on earth do we end up with Joachim Bartol looking at the exact same digestive tract and concluding that those same plants are literally tearing it apart?
It really requires a complete inversion of how we view human evolution. I mean, it's a total paradigm shift.
How so?
Well, Bartol's work, particularly in his book Beyond the Fiber Lie, builds this meticulously detailed narrative that human biology is optimized solely for consuming animal tissues.
Solely animal tissues, wow.
Yeah, in his framework, plants are just starvation foods.
Like, you only eat them if you have to.
Right, you eat them to survive a famine. But he argues they actively disrupt our endocrine and gastrointestinal function when we consume them chronically.
Which brings us to the most mind-bending claim in his entire protocol, what he calls the fiber lie.
Oh, yeah, this is where it gets really controversial.
Because we just spent 10 minutes talking about how fiber ferments into butyrate to heal the gut. But Bartol says fiber is actually an indigestible menace, right?
He does. He argues that because we cannot digest it, fiber just acts as a mechanical irritant.
Instead of a soft broom.
Exactly. Instead of a broom, he views it as physical abrasion. Imagine rubbing sandpaper along the incredibly delicate microscopic villi lining your intestinal tract day after day.
Ouch. That sounds awful.
Yeah.
Like literally tearing up your insides.
Yeah, and Bartol suggests that this constant mechanical friction causes low-grade chronic inflammation.
But what about the fermentation? The butyrate?
He believes that the fermentation process Null praises is actually just bacterial overgrowth feeding on rotting plant matter in your gut.
Rotting plant matter. Wow.
Yeah, he says that causes the bloating and gas, which he views as clear signs of distress, not health.
That is a staggering contrast. But his argument against plants isn't just about the physical friction of fiber, is it? It goes deep into plant chemistry.
It does. He talks a lot about anti-nutrients, things like phytates, oxalates, and lectins.
Because, plants can't run away from predators, so they have to use chemical warfare.
Yeah.
But how do these anti-nutrients actually harm us biochemically?
Well, they possess chelating properties.
Chelating.
Yeah. Chelation is a chemical process where molecules act like microscopic magnets, or handcuffs might be a better word.
Okay, chemical handcuffs.
Right. When you eat a plant loaded with phytates, like the ancient grains Null recommends, those phytates enter your digestive tract and lock onto essential minerals, like iron, zinc, and calcium.
So wait, even if the quinoa you are eating is high in iron, those molecular handcuffs lock the iron up before your body can even absorb it.
That is the exact mechanism he describes. You just excrete the minerals instead of utilizing them.
That's crazy.
And Bartol argues this constant mineral depletion, combined with the immune system's reaction to plant proteins like lectins, leads directly to the systemic autoimmune issues we see everywhere today.
Hold on, though. If Bartol wants us to completely strip away plants, what is the alternative? Because he advocates for a macronutrient shift that honestly sounds alarming to anyone raised on standard dietary guidelines.
You mean the high-fat content?
Yeah. He wants 70 to 80% dietary fat, 15 to 30% protein, and near zero carbohydrates.
Wow.
I mean, my doctor has been telling me for 20 years that eating 80% animal fat will clog my arteries and stop my heart.
It's the standard medical advice for sure.
So how does Bartol justify that biochemically?
By understanding the metabolic shift into evolutionary ketogenesis.
Okay, explain that.
When you restrict carbohydrate intake to near zero, so no grains, no sugars, no starchy vegetables, your liver is forced to completely change its energy infrastructure.
Because it doesn't have the plant glucose to burn anymore.
Exactly. So it begins converting dietary fatty acids into ketone bodies instead, and the primary one is called beta-hydroxybutyrate.
Beta-hydroxybutyrate. Okay, and how does that function differently than glucose as a fuel?
Well, glucose is like kindling for a fire. It burns bright and hot, and it causes a quick spike in blood sugar and insulin, but it burns out really quickly, leading to a crash.
Right, you get that afternoon slump, and you have to constantly stoke the fire with more carbs.
Exactly. Beta-hydroxybutyrate, on the other hand, is like a massive oak log. It provides a highly efficient, incredibly steady, non-glycemic fuel source for both the brain and the muscles.
So no spikes and no crashes.
Right. Bartol argues this is actually the evolutionary default state for humans, running on stable lipids, which eliminates the oxidative stress and insulin resistance caused by constantly managing those blood sugar spikes.
Okay, get the fuel part. But without all those plant-based superfoods, where is he getting his vitamins from? I mean, Noel have his massive supplement stack. How does Bartol fill the nutritional gaps?
Through endogenous nutrition, primarily by eating organ meats, like liver, and crucially, consuming them within their natural lipid matrices.
Meaning eating the organs with their natural fats still intact.
Yes.
But why does the fat matter so much for the vitamins?
Because the most vital nutrients for human health are fat-soluble. Animal liver provides preformed, highly bioavailable retinol, which is true vitamin A.
Wait, I thought carrots had vitamin A.
Well, when you eat a carrot, you are getting beta-carotene, which is just a plant precursor to vitamin A.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, your body has to go through a metabolically expensive conversion process just to turn a tiny fraction of that beta-carotene into usable retinol.
So it's super inefficient.
Highly inefficient. Animal organs provide retinol, vitamin D3, heme iron, and B12 in the exact biochemical format human cells require. There is no conversion needed at all.
That is fascinating.
And furthermore, Bartol argues that the natural collagen and amino acids found in animal tissues heal the intestinal mucosa perfectly, completely bypassing the need for any fiber fermentation.
Wow. It is truly a night and day comparison.
It really is.
Knoll uses fiber and plant antioxidants to heal the gut and detox the liver. And Bartol uses animal collagen and lipids to heal the gut, and ketones to fuel the brain.
Right. Opposite paths.
But here is where both of these pristine theoretical paradigms crash headfirst into reality. Because they both have to contend with our highly toxic modern environment.
Ah, yes. This is the most significant hurdle for both protocols, the bioaccumulation dilemma.
Let's really explore that because it seems to hit Bartol's carnivore model particularly hard. By avoiding plants, sure, he avoids the anti-nutrients and the glyphosate sprayed on crops, but by relying on 80% animal fat, he walks right into the problem of lipophilic toxins.
Yeah, he does. And lipophilic simply means fat-loving.
Fat-loving. Okay.
Many of the most dangerous environmental and industrial pollutants, we're talking heavy metals, microplastics, persistent organic pollutants from degraded soils, they are entirely fat-soluble.
So what happens when a cow eats them?
Well, when an animal in the industrial agriculture system is exposed to these toxins, its body doesn't easily excrete them. It sequesters them away in its adipose tissue, its fat, to keep them out of its own bloodstream.
Oh, no. So if you were eating a diet that is almost entirely animal fat, and that animal wasn't raised in a pristine environment,
You aren't just eating fuel.
you are eating a concentrated sponge of environmental toxins.
Exactly the problem. And this is actually a massive point of contention, even within the high-fat community itself.
Really?
Yeah, the sources highlight a debate between Bartol and a figure named Dr. Kiltz. Kiltz takes a very pragmatic, almost dismissive approach to this sourcing issue.
What does he say?
He argues that the metabolic state of ketogenesis is just so protective on its own that sourcing shouldn't be a barrier to entry. His stance is basically, don't worry if it's grass-fed, just eat the fat.
But Bartol completely rejects that, doesn't
Now
he?
considers it actively dangerous. Because of that bioaccumulation threat we just talked about, Bartol has established incredibly rigorous sourcing requirements.
Like what?
To execute his evolutionary protocol safely, he insists you must source 100% pasture-raised, grass-finished animals from strictly regenerative farms.
And he even mandates that they be vaccine-free and mRNA-free, which I found really interesting. Why is veterinary medicine an issue for human consumption?
Because of the adjuvants used in those injections, things like aluminum or thimerosal, which are used to stimulate the animal's immune response, they can also accumulate in the animal's lipid tissues.
So Bartol wants absolutely zero industrial chemical footprint in the fat.
None. And his rules extend all the way to the butcher, too.
Right, because commercial meat processing often uses industrial chemical washes like bleach just to sanitize the meat, right?
Yes, unfortunately. So Bartol mandates finding artisanal butchers who use only natural antimicrobials like lactic acid or apple cider vinegar to clean the meat.
And doesn't he even dictate the packaging?
He does. You have to avoid microplastics leaching into the fat, which means insisting on butcher paper, glass, or stainless steel containers.
Okay, but let's be real for a second here.
Sure.
If I have to source perfectly organic, non-GMO, ancient raw grains for Knoll's detox, or perfectly pasture-raised, unwashed, vaccine-free animal fat wrapped in paper for Bartol's ketogenesis, does eating just become a full-time job?
It really does sound exhausting.
Like, how is an average person supposed to afford, let alone manage, this level of hypervigilance?
It is honestly the most valid critique of both systems. Navigating the modern food supply with these rules borders on a full-time logistical operation. It's incredibly difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But if we synthesize the core philosophies driving both Knoll and Bartol, they actually arrive at one undeniable shared truth.
Which is?
that the modern processed Western diet is toxic. It is fundamentally incompatible with human biology.
They just choose opposite biological pathways to survive that toxicity. Null chooses antioxidant saturation to constantly sweep the debris out of the system.
While Bartol chooses lipid-driven ketogenesis to avoid the plant-based irritants entirely and fuel the body with ancient preformed nutrients.
But both require a total, complete divorce from the industrial food complex.
Absolutely.
We've gone deep into the biochemistry of a strict plant-based detox and an evolutionary carnivore diet. We understand the mechanisms. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over on your own.
I love these. Let's hear it.
It's something we haven't deeply discussed today, but that sits quietly at the center of both of these extreme paradigms. Let's call it the placebo effect of restriction.
The placebo effect of restriction. That is a fascinating angle. What do you mean by that exactly?
Think about the massive biological relief the body experiences when you simply stop poisoning it.
Right.
Could it be that the sheer act of consciously, rigorously eliminating highly processed, hyper-palatable industrial junk food, the seed oils, the refined sugars, the artificial preservatives, is the true universal healing factor here?
Oh, that's a brilliant point.
Right. Like whether you replace that industrial junk with raw quinoa and organic kale, or you replace it with grass-fed liver and tallow, the magic might not actually be in the superfoods themselves.
It's in the elimination.
Exactly. The true magic might simply lie in what you are not eating anymore.
I completely agree. By entirely removing the chronic metabolic stress of the Western diet, you allow the body's innate healing mechanisms to finally wake up and activate. So whether your metabolic machinery is running on plant glucose or animal ketones, the absence of toxic interference might just be the primary driver of disease reversal. It is a really powerful paradigm to consider.
It really shifts the perspective, doesn't it? From asking, what is the perfect food, to asking, what is the perfect elimination?
It definitely does.
And that is exactly why we do these deep dives, to get past the dietary dogma and look at the actual mechanisms of health.
Thank you for listening to another session of the GemmaNotebook.art series. You can find the full archive of all my podcasts at GemmaNotebook.art.